Okay. Right. Uh, you, 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 Okay.
Hello, good day.
Hello. Let's see. I'm on meeting people in. Uh, 30. Yeah, making sure the speakers have all the links. And more people are coming in. Okay. Hi, welcome to day 3 of AI in Writing Summit. I'm excited that Kate is here with us because the summit would not have been possible without the support from Kate herself and the Plain Language Academies. So a big shout out to the academies and thank you.
Thank you.
Um, you want to share with people here and also for those people that are going to be watching the recording of this to let people know what the academies is all about?
Sure, thank you. Yes, the Plain Language Academies, which I think are about 7 years old now, were developed to provide training that reflected the plain language process online so people could easily access it. And I think we've achieved that, and we've expanded to Romina's Spanish-based Plain Language Academy, and Chantal and Amelia have a French one. We have instructors from South Africa, and we just keep developing new courses as the demand grows and the profession, changes and starts to include more. So it's just been a really exciting endeavor for me, and it's just made the most fantastic connections. And looks like I need to get my AI stuff in gear because here's the next wave. But I do love the parallel between plain language and AI. And it's all based on audience, keeping it focused and simple and just getting the results you want.
And just because Kate won't mention this, but she has been a trailblazer in the plain language world. She has launched a lot of the plain language major initiatives like Plain Language Association International, together with Cheryl Stevens, like the establishment of Plain Language Day, the Plain Language Academies, and going into other languages, which won the academies, but really Kate, the Plain Language Award for Innovation. So I am very grateful to have her support and her friendship and her guidance because she is an extremely smart person and extremely generous. So
Thank you. You are generous too. But I'm so excited because what I didn't expect myself the academies was the people I would meet, the people I would collaborate with, like Romina, like Chantal, like Nicole, like Cheryl, like Sarah, Nadia, and goes on and on. Because it's just so exciting. And the other thing that I really I'm so passionate about is the whole aspect of plain language and accessibility, which again I think is something that we share with AI.
yep, that's I think we have the perfect segue to welcome Scott Mayer here. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the summit.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Just to give you a brief introduction, you can read more about Scott, but he has launched Cheap AI, which is a fantastic hub for developing apps. And one of the things we talked about on Thursday with Diana was considering AI your intern. And Scott's presentation, for those of you who may not have seen it yet, uh, has a bunch of amazing information. And I want to talk about code. I want to talk about all these things. But one of the practical applications is, oh, thank you for sharing the link. One of the practical applications was really the protege, which I love the word. I love that. So without further ado, we're going to start. And I would like, Scott, for you to give us a little bit more background of how you got started with this project.
Sure. Yeah. Great to be here, everybody. I'm calling in from Fargo, just like the movie, in the north central part of the United States. And I've spent most of my professional career, I would say, like translating tech, like making things more accessible, starting with social media. In 2009, my first company, I was teaching older ladies across the Dakotas how to set up a Facebook page. And that comes to today where I think that AI is an essential skill that people are going to have to navigate. And I'm trying to make that easy for people to do. One thing we've seen is that despite the fact that AI can be used just with plain language, there's actually a fairly large gender disparity in the usage of AI, with men using it much more than women. And the other stat that always blows my mind is that over 40% of Americans use it every week, but fewer than 5% of businesses do, which means that those businesses just don't know their employees are using AI, right? Because those 40% of people work at those businesses. So I think there's this taboo still that needs to be overcome. The best way for us to get better at using AI is actually to learn from one another. And so it's really important for organizations to give permission that their employees use it, and more importantly, share how to use it. So I got started working in AI, quite a while ago before ChatGPT, teaching AI to developers at a company called Proof of Learn. So my background's in digital marketing, and then I went into higher ed and then started teaching developers AI. And once ChatGPT came out, it was clear that this would be impactful, not just for developers, but for everybody. And so I wanted to make an easy way to for anybody to start using AI and build their own tools with it. And so that's how we created Chip.ai, which is essentially a platform where you can build AI applications that can be embedded and shared and even sold without knowing any code. A lot of organizations use it to automate or create more efficiencies around admin work and writing and marketing. So that's a little bit how I got started. So happy to go wherever is helpful, Romina.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I want to share a couple of things from your presentation. One is the code framework, which you mentioned. Would you mind telling us what that is about?
So if anyone's familiar with the Second Brain community, it originated there. It's the CODE code. It stands for Capture, Organize, Distill, and Express. And so not AI specific, it's really a way of managing information, right? And whenever we get information, first we have to capture it, just get it somehow, right? Put it in a note, take a picture of it, record it, whatever the media is. And then at some point we need to organize that so that it makes sense. And we can find it, and then distill that. So take this, big note or this information and put it into a few key points, and then express it, like use that in our paper or blog post or podcast or video or whatever we're going to do. So I think this is a great framework thinking about where and how to use AI, because it can really help at each stage of that process in different ways. For me personally, I can walk through, kind of that code framework. Like I spend a lot of time in the car. I have 4 kids, and I might have ideas and I can't always write them down or type them out. And so I do a lot of voice notes just on my phone. So I use a voice note and just record an idea in the car. And then I can send that voice note to AI, which will transcribe it for me. So that's kind of organizing it. And then I'll take those voice notes and upload them to an AI tool like Chip and say, put this into an outline for a blog post or for, a paper or whatever I'm working on. So that'll kind of distill it to its key points. And then I'll go into that blog post or paper, and I'll be writing with my AI tool next to me, kind of getting ideas, improving them, copy editing, and expressing that. So that's a quick example. There's a lot, we can go a lot deeper on any of those letters, but that's a helpful way, I think, to think about the best tool for the moment. Yeah.
I think when you share that, I'm like, oh, where was this? When I was driving my kids to school, and I was spending all that time in the car.
Yeah.
I think
And
it is
it's
a
the best part is like
real case.
I can send, I can take a voice note, and I have an automation set up. So I'll email the voice note, it'll automatically transcribe and then put up an outline onto my blog. So I have a draft blog post at home when I get back from school drop off, right? So when I go to work and actually sit down, I don't start with a blank page. And that's often how I talk about AI is, it's not an answer machine, it's an idea machine. And it's great for solving the blank page problem, which is just the hardest part is starting. And if you already start with an outline, I might end up deleting 95% of it, but at least I have something to react to and to get my ideas going. And I think AI is so good at solving that problem.
Yeah, I like that, something to react to, and that we talked about that a little bit yesterday. That sometimes it's not the end product, it's the beginning where you uh, have a dialogue, where you fight with it, and you react to it. And I very much liked your quote about I don't want AI to do my writing so I can do my laundry and dishes, but I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so I can do my writing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think every job has laundry and dishes, right? So within our job, there's tasks we don't enjoy, and we should make sure to set AI to that first, because if it solves those problems, we're going to be much more likely to, to use it than if it's doing things that we actually want to do. There's a there's a pretty interesting study that came out just last week on medical research. And the researchers who used AI had a significant increase in discovery. So 40% more patents and discoveries were made using AI, but 75% of the doctors said they were less happy using AI. And so I think that's a interesting finding, and a risk is, even if AI helps us do the work faster or better, if it's something that we find value in, it can make us, unfulfilled. And so I think starting with AI on the tasks that you don't want to do is a great place to start.
Yeah, and so I want to shift a little bit to or put this in context, in the context of Chip, because one of the things that surprised me about Chip was that there's templates for a lot of different professions. So this is very real world applications. Dentist offices, chiropractic offices are using this. So can you maybe share some examples of, subject fields that are coming to the hub?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, our most like common users on Chip are people who have admin tasks, which go across industries, right? We're all doing Zoom calls and writing notes and writing emails. And then we have a lot of agencies who are using Chip to build tools for their clients. So marketing agencies, advertising agencies, and they can build a bespoke software tool now in minutes and charge, a good price to their clients and make it custom for them without even using developer time. And then we have a fair number of like coaches and consultants, because coaches and consultants are often, one person solopreneurs who really need to save time and also get as much information to their clients in between sessions. So you can imagine a coach being able to have a virtual protege like we talked about, and their clients can talk to it and get ideas and share like what they're working on, and then in the next coaching session they're further along and ready to help. And so we have professional services, like you mentioned, dentist offices, we have chiropractors, we have health clinics that they're doing the same thing of like following up with insurance, sending emails, just keeping track. And that's the laundry and dishes, right? Like my brother's an orthodontist, and he said their staff spends about an hour a day on the phone checking on insurance to make sure that people's plans cover the procedures. And that's not like critical thinking, right? Like that is just finding information, which is a perfect use for AI.
Yeah, that's I think that's a very, very concrete example.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked about building on Chip was the fact that there's templates. So yes, there's no code, but there is a lot of ability to control what's happening, including the models that you use,
Yeah.
which a lot of other portals don't give you. They just give
Yeah.
you the model they give you.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about that, and what models and how you're integrating into more models?
Yeah, for sure. So all paid chip plans allow you to switch between the major frontier models. So those would be like the best models out there. So that would be like GPT 4.0 as well as o1, Gemini, and Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So, if you purchase those individually, they're all $20 a month, right? As an individual. The starting plan with chip is $29. So you can really get, off the bat, $60 of value. But what's fascinating with those models is that they all are a little different. I find Claude does really well with PDFs and more conversation. I use ChatGPT when it's more strategy and numbers. I use Gemini when it's really long context. You can upload a lot of information in the question, and it'll be able to handle it. So it's nice to be able to switch through those models and see how it changes. And the big thing people use Chip for is that they can ground their AI on their own knowledge. So grounding essentially means you're giving it information. So if you're writing a grant, you give it a previous grant application to look at. If you're writing a chapter in a book, you're giving it a previous chapter you've written. And then your AI tool sounds like you, right? And it's able to take your information, and that could be from a website or a YouTube video or a paper, and it uses that as the training. One thing that I've noticed is, AI is really good at pattern matching, much, much better than humans. Just by giving it one or two articles or artifacts that you've created, it'll immediately start mimicking your sentence structure, your vocabulary, the level of your writing. And so I think I often refer to the RIPE framework as the best way to talk to an AI tool, which is, you tell it who it should be, you give it a role, then you give it an instruction, like what its job is. Then you give it any parameters, like make it with bullet points, keep it short, long. And then most important is the E of RIPE, which is given an example. By giving an example, it automatically will kind of learn what you want. So that's a really powerful way to use AI.
Yeah, lately I've been expanding my Claude projects, and I entered the wrong project, and I asked it something, and I'm like, "Why are you giving me this? This is for a post."
Yeah.
And it's like, no, because it's matching that pattern that I gave it as an instruction, and it's not deviating from that.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, this is, it can also help you see how structure and see how different places require different formats, and this is something
Yeah.
that very important in plain language.
Yeah.
So the parameters and the examples, I want to make like emphasize how good your overview of the different tools is. So you guys could try that. Look into GPT, maybe more for strategy, into Claude for getting more conversational and distilling PDFs. We saw yesterday with Serge Gladkov that Claude can output Markdown, which is fantastic, because then we have a lot of control over how to display it ultimately. And we use Gemini for if you have a lot of context. So those are very good summaries of the strengths of the different tools.
Yeah. And I think where I see AI going is, there's going to be some general models, but I kind of imagine there being more specific models for different tasks. I just think that we're not going to need all the power of what GPT-5 or whatever the next thing is for certain tasks. And we're already seeing that a little bit with, there's open source models that you can also use through Chip, like Mistral is one from a French company, Llama, which is from Meta, Facebook. And what's fun about those is you can actually run those on your own cloud, on your own device. So everything's private. So one thing we do offer with Chip is, the ability to run AI totally privately. And the fact that you can run it on your own device means you can also modify it as much as you want. So that might be taking off some of the guardrails that it has, or adding, expertise, fine-tuning it, et cetera. So I don't think for most of us, the tech is easy enough to do yet, but I would imagine in the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to be like, I need my writing model, right? And there's one that's especially good at that versus the medical research model or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and you just touched upon something that I wanted to ask about, which is privacy, confidentiality, and how you guys are, addressing that so that people feel confident to come in and say, "Hey, I want to, I want to build my tool. I'm building my tools," and you have now people in the marketplace sharing, selling, and using these for everyday tasks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I often refer to like the pyramid of privacy. I think there's 4 steps. Like the easiest thing to do, if you think the bottom of the pyramid, what we can all do in a company or personally, is just have a plan of what you will and won't share on AI. And this solves 90% of the problems, right? So often within a company, if they're debating an AI policy or whatever, really what they need to decide is like, what will we not upload to AI? Like, are we comfortable sharing a spreadsheet with customer information? Are we comfortable uploading, our strategies? Personally, I tell people like AI has all of the words in the history of the internet through April 2024 right now. Your sentence is not going to be like a big factor in that model. And as we know about AI, it's not like Google where I can say, what did Scott say? And it'll bring back an answer. It's actually generating an answer, like predicting what word comes next. So the ability to retrieve my information is basically zero. But I say that's the first step. The second step is on ChatGPT, you can shut off the ability for it to use it for training. On Chip, it's never used for training. And on Claude, it's never used for training. And then you can, on the third level, think about where your files live. So if you upload a file, it will make a copy on, OpenAI or Anthropic because it has to reference that file. Claude deletes that after 30 days. OpenAI doesn't delete it, so it's on their server. Chip, you can choose to have it not even stored at all. And then the most private is you can actually take information out, like personal information out, which is something that Chip offers. So I'd say like privacy is possible, but the best practice is just think through what you are and aren't comfortable sharing and start there.
Yeah, those are yes, two good strategies and things to take into account. This ties into the guidelines that we discussed yesterday with Nuria Negrao. And even if you are not at a point where you're using this publicly, to think through what's happening and what are your what content you use, it helps you then go, especially if you're going to have to deal with clients, and have a transparent conversation about what's happening. So another thing, you guys let us know if you have questions. The chat is open. You can certainly raise your hand and mute yourself. I have one more topic that I thought it was very interesting, and it reflects. I was a few months ago at the PyTorch conference, and it was very striking to me that 1 in 10, and maybe even less, were women at the conference. So you touch on that in your presentation about the disparity, and just out of curiosity, how did you come about the numbers, and what how can we encourage the more conversation about that?
Yeah. The numbers are from academic research out of Denmark in September of 24. I forget the names of the two researchers offhand, but they basically were doing research across how often people use it and which industries and by gender. And it was across every industry, basically the same difference, probably 15% fewer women. I think it's just a carryover of mindset, of like people think AI is technical, and if they think they're not technical, they won't use it. And we've seen disparities in previous technical work. I think it's fascinating looking at the history there, where like in the early 80s, more females were computer science majors than men. And when the personal computer came out, Time magazine cover of Steve Jobs, on a computer, and it became sort of like a father-son thing, like play video games on the personal computer, and became more of a, codified as like a male industry, which is when you see the shift. But so that's just kind of an interesting background, right? Ada Lovelace wasn't male, right? Like people who started the industry. But I think that what we have to do is improve literacy of AI and get people to try it, because that's why we created Chip. Is once you see how easy it is to iterate and to communicate with it, you'll succeed. And I think some of the research I've seen that's really fascinating is that older people actually are better at using AI than younger people, which is quite different than most tech.
Oh, that is a very interesting observation and finding. I am doing research in reading comprehension, and I see that older people who have had a lot more training in reading long texts without interruptions are better, are addressing some of these issues. So that's very interesting to hear that from you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think a big reason is expertise. I think AI is perfect for the Renaissance person or for the liberal artist, because if I'm trying to make a image and I want it to look like Picasso, but I don't know who Picasso is, it's really hard to explain that, right? Like, how do you use words to tell DALL-E to create something like Picasso. But if I know who Picasso is, I just say, make it like Picasso, or make it like Georgian architecture, or write it like Hemingway, right? But if you don't know, if you don't have that language, you have to do a lot of explaining and often are not going to get the answer you want. And so AI does really well when you're an expert in a field, because you can just say, you know, make it look like this or make it sound like that. And if you know what that is, and you can say it in one word or example, AI will know who that is, but it's not going to tell you who it is for you to say it. So I think that's really fascinating. It's not often that technology favors the old, but I think in this case it could. I'd say the only caveat there is that AI also has disproportionate impact on raising the floor. So the things that you're bad at, it'll have a bigger impact on. So if you're a really great writer, AI will help you, but it'll help you a lot more if you're a really bad writer, right? Because it'll improve the baseline. And so that's why I say use it for the things you hate, because it'll probably have a larger impact on the things that take you a long time or that you're not as good at. So if you're bad at spreadsheets, you know, AI will help you a lot. If you're good at spreadsheets, maybe you want to use AI for your emails or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's a interesting connection there. Like, it's good if you're skilled, but also it'll have a big difference moving bad people to average people.
Yeah, that's also an interesting observation, and we'll come back to that. But I see Hiba has a question or a comment, so go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So Scott, like I like Ship very well. It's like very user friendly. But I have a question because I tried to use DiFi to use my own local model. Beside being user friendly, what do you think more advantages of Ship? And another question, if we use the enterprise model and like choose not to upload our chat to the like training, like is a chip adding more or extra layer of protection, or it's like alternative to just like adjusting the privacy parameter to any model? Like, because I'm really interested in your product, but I need to know like what is the added value compared to DiFi and compared to my setting adjustment.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, big values for Chip, like you said, is ease, and then it would be connection. So you can connect to other software with Chip. So for example, you create information and you want it to go to your blog post or to a Google document, or you want to bring information in from your CRM or from an API somewhere else. So you can connect knowledge sources in and out. And then you can brand it and embed it. So you can build these tools and put them on your own website, internally or externally. And then we do have built-in sales capabilities. So some people will build custom AI tools, and then they can either charge per use or charge a monthly subscription for people to create it. So you could build an AI tool that's really well trained for writers, and then say, hey, if you want to use mine instead of trying to go build your own or trying to go prompt ChatGPT every single time, you can do that, and it's whatever per month, and you just get paid for that. So those are a few benefits. In terms of privacy, it can be anywhere in that pyramid. So at the high end, like Chip would be much more private because we can actually run AI on your own cloud. So that would be the equivalent of creating your own AI model locally. And so we would run Mistral in your AWS or Azure or GCP cloud. And then neither the files nor the questions are seen by anyone. If you don't go that far and instead you're just using Chip, the privacy benefits would be compared to ChatGPT, we wouldn't store the files at all. Compared to Claude, they store it for 30 days, so it'd be a little bit safer than that. And then we never use it for training, which is available on all the models, but you have to check the box. So it kind of depends where you go in terms of the privacy. Yeah, great questions. Happy to answer more, but I'll pause there in case you have any follow-ups, Eva.
Thanks.
I see Carla. Yeah, there you go. You are on right now.
Yeah, there's a couple in the chat too. I'll take after Carla. So
hello.
hi.
Is that right now that you were answering that, I have a question. For example, in my business, we have like I think it's Pro and ChatGPT, but what if I don't want to use only ChatGPT and I'm not paying the other ones, just only to try them? So can I use Chip to try the other ones? that's for free instead of just using the
Yeah.
ChatGPT that I have pro?
Yep. Yeah. So with Chip, if so whenever you sign up, you actually get 7 days of like a pro membership. So you can try all the models for 7 days for free. And then if you subscribe, which is $29 a month, then you have access to Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT 4o and O1 and Mistral at any time. And you can change per application. So you might have an application for writing that uses Claude, or one for, financial analysis that uses ChatGPT. And you can even duplicate them with one click and switch the models and then compare, like see how the same prompt does in different models. So yeah, a lot of people use it that way. It's a way to switch models easily and build tools that are, would be called custom GPTs. So essentially like pre-trained, right? So when you go use it, you don't have to say, you are a writer trying to build this, use this text, like it's already there. You just start. Yeah.
Okay, yes, that's the way I prompt. It's like, okay, you're a community manager for this company, and you have to make these types of posts. Please list this, and that, and something like that. Those are the kind of prompts that I use.
Yeah, exactly. So with Chip, what you would do is you would put those prompts in, and then they're saved. So you always come back to a specific URL, and it's already prompted. So you just start into the conversation. And most importantly, you can share that with other people who have no idea how to use AI, right? And it's actually prepared for them. Whoop. Here's Sebastian.
Thank you.
Sebastian's helping me out here.
Hello.
Yeah, say hi.
This is a great foreshadowing of our session with Kunal Dalal, who uses AI for K-12 education and did a session on kind of fun and integration, intergenerational use with kids.
Oh, it's the best. I use the audio version of ChatGPT all the time. And like I have 4. My youngest 3 aren't very good at typing yet because they're 9, 7, and 3. But they can all of a sudden use AI, right? And I think the same on the other end of the spectrum, or older people who have issues with loneliness or memory, like all of a sudden they have a companion who's willing to repeat the same conversation over and over.
Yes, that's it's incredible to me that this is one of the uses. I saw some of the robots at the Gen AI conference, companion robots for facilities where, people, nursing facilities, etc. So I want to go to a couple of other questions because we're at time, and I want to.
Let me hit the ones in the chat. Is that what you're looking at, Romina?
Yes, that's what I'm looking.
Okay, I'll hit them quick. So Kate, that's exactly right. So a big benefit of Chip is if you share it, whoever's using it also benefits from that model, right? So we just charge the builder, and then all of your users can use it. So if you build a ChatGPT 4o writing assistant and you share it with all of your students in a school, all the students can use it without having to all pay $20 per month. So we do a lot of K-12 schools, a lot of higher education universities, and like trade organizations who would buy it and then offer it to their members, essentially. So that's a big benefit. And Jeff's question, great one. Like I talk about predicting tokens like as a bell curve, and essentially like the x-axis is like how common it is, right? And the y-axis would be like the likelihood that it'll be chosen. So the words that are in the middle of the bell curve are like the most likely next word. So if I say like the weather, the next word most likely will is or was, right? Those are like the best options. That'll be in the middle of the bell curve. And then let's see, model interfaces, chat model. Yep, I use that too. That's right. Imagine alternatives. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of innovation around UI for AI. I think the LM Notebook is like an interesting new version with the podcast edition. I love audio, but it's so expensive right now. Like to be able to integrate audio into an app like Chip, most people wouldn't pay for it at the prices that they charge right now. So I think that will change quite a bit as the price falls. So yeah, I think the interface will change a lot, and we'll be offering new versions of that. And I love Jane's question to end. The most unusual case, the most unusual thing for AI. So many. Gosh, I'm trying to think about my kids. Like my 7-year-old likes to write stories about mermaids, and for her, she's illustrating them as well. And I'll just let her go and do it, and then I can see this transcript later, and it's just like more mermaids, more mermaids. It's just like mermaids filling up the screen. I mean, that's kind of a fun use case, but I think we're doing work with Northern Illinois University, and they're creating a tutor for every class. That's, all of them are multilingual by default, and they're a majority minority institution. So a lot of people speak Spanish, and they don't have tutors who can always support in those languages. So AI becomes a great way to help. They're trying to lower the dropout rate, especially in calculus and trigonometry and some of these early math classes. So we use AI as tutors there, and then also AI for class advisor, like how to pick what to study and how to create your schedule. So that's a really fascinating use case because it's always on. It always speaks your language. You can talk through it through text message. And people come to the actual tutor with a transcript of what they've been working on. So the tutor can actually help them more in person, which is really interesting. So yeah, I'll kick it back to you, Romina. I don't want to
Yes, no,
monopolize
thank
the
you.
time
That
here.
was fantastic. I appreciate it. I know we scheduled just a short amount of time, and I know that people that are going to be watching the recording are going to be very happy with a lot of the answers. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause and say thank you. Hopefully, we'll continue the conversation in the community, and we'll come back to you if there's any other questions that we see. Let's see. And now we are welcoming Andy. I think she is on the call.
Here I am.
There you go. Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
Good. Hi, Romina. Happy to be here.
So
Hi,
now,
everyone.
Andy's presentation was about, I love the title, Mind Your Bots, Mind Your Ethics. Andy is a lawyer and translator extraordinaire. She is, yes, you are. And she is now the president-elect of the American Translators Association. She has done an incredible job with the ATA conference this year. I was unfortunately unable to go because my father passed away. And so I kept working on this summit in the spirit of him and my mom always inspiring us to be curious and to share our knowledge. And Andy has supported me through all of this, and she is a very generous mind and heart. And so she's going to share with us reflections and ideas about how to deal with our ethical struggling with AI. So let's start with a quick overview of your thoughts about like a summary of your presentation, if you will, and then we'll go to questions because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of ideas and questions and comments.
Well, thank you for having me. As everybody can see, Romina is my friend. That's why she was so generous with the comments about me. I think that AI is phenomenal. And like I said the other day, I don't know in what forum I was, but a friend of mine, Salvador Virgen, I want to give him the full quote, AI is going to become transparent. And what does it mean by that? We don't think about electricity. We don't think about computer. It's part of our life. And AI is going to become that. AI is going to do extraordinary things for us. Like Scott was explaining about, kids in school, tutoring. And we just think about the small box, but let's think about outside the box. So what about the ethical that I wrote? Well, if you use AI to replace you, then you have to say it. When you're writing, if you use it to inspire you with ideas, then don't, because that's what I talk about, the difference between content creation completely and assisted in content. We use Grammarly. I use Grammarly all the time. And that is helping me, correct this, correct that. That is AI. We've been using AI for years. It's just that it cannot replace us in the creativity. And we have to learn how to use it thoroughly. The more we learn, the more we can use it in spaces that help us be creative as humans, but the tasks that we don't need, like Scott was saying, typewriting, we don't need to typewrite. We can say it. Let's be creative in using AI. Well, but I talk about the ethical. If anybody has any question about ethical, that's.
Yeah, if you guys have questions and comments, please raise your hand and we'll go to that. And I'll go to that as I see on my screen. I know that everybody's screen looks a little bit different with how you see people, but so don't worry, we'll get to everybody. And one of my questions and the reflections is this idea, which we've been repeating these throughout the days, the idea that AI is not the ultimate solution or the ultimate answer, but it is an ingredient in your process. And it can be, we've used several words to describe these. Your assistant, your intern, it's a word that Diana Wolf Torres used, your protege, the word that Scott used, and I really like that too. And now you're bringing in this concept of having AI be inspirational, be part of your
It's a toolbox. It's part of your tool. But
toolbox.
last year I call it AI your added improvement. It helps you improve yourself. It doesn't replace you, but it improves. Improve in what? For example, Grammarly improves my writing. Sometimes I need to do it. AI helps me improve my schedule, or give me ideas how to write something from another perspective, because we use it. We live so expandedly. I mean, I don't have my friends all the time with me, and you want to bounce an idea. Hey, what do you think about that? And sometimes you can use AI for that. And AI sometimes says no, and gives you another way to think from that, another perspective. Or in a translation, I would translate this like this. What do you think? No, I would do that. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not, but it's like a bouncing board.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an added improvement. And that's why when you learn to do prompts and, write like Hemingway, you have to use it in whatever you do. I do legal as not a writing like anybody, but it's in many other aspects, AI is here to stay. And when computers were, when we started with computers, people said, we're going to be replaced. Computers going to do everything for us. They're not. Computer replaced the typewriter. And many of us, at least, I use computer like a typewriter with some better functions, but I'm not a nerd. Definitely not. I'm a, social, legal mind. But it helped me to research. How can we live now without research in the internet? I grew up with research in the library. I don't want to say how old I am. I'm going to say that the research I did was in the library. You have to go physically to a library. So the advances we have in all this that we are getting is phenomenal. And we have to embrace it. We have to embrace it like I can research the law in a country, in a city that I wasn't able to before. So all that, we cannot think of just this little cubicle. We have to think of, like Scott was saying, how about a kid who can be explained calculus in a country far away? We have to think of that. AI is the added improvement in whatever life
Yes,
we're thinking about.
I like the idea of a bouncing board, and I like the idea of having us thinking about bringing the technology to the surface and disclosing its use where it's due. We talked a lot yesterday about intellectual property and disclosure and confidentiality. So there's places where you don't tell the client, I'm using a computer.
Correct. But there's a fine line, because you don't say to somebody, I use the MT, I use a CAT tool. We don't use it. We don't say it. The accountant doesn't tell you I use QuickBooks. So if it's a program that helps you organize. It doesn't do the thinking for you. If you use AI to help you organize, to help you in whatever session without being replaced by AI, I don't think you need to disclose it. If you use AI and you use writing and you use a lot of the creative content that has a lot of works that they've been copyrighted without permission, then you have to disclose, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things there. But if you use your own writing with like a bouncing board, and that's why you have to be careful how much, because that's the line, how much you use of it.
Yes, and I think this is a very dynamic place where we're at now, of how much we're using and what are where are the boundaries, where are the frontiers, and this ties in. And just to make sure that everybody understands, Andy and I are translators, and so CAT tools are computer assisted translation tools, and it also goes for any other like editing tools like the spell checker that you have in your computers, or Grammarly, or any tool like that, like WordRake, which is one of the tools that has given us a discount. So if you guys want to check it out, there's a lot of different options, and we want to be mindful of where we're using it and to what extent. And so this leads me to the question of labeling that use and labeling the type of output. And I know that you do a lot of work in the space of language industry standards and labels. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We're working now. One of the things is that in the United States, different from Europe, we don't have a very hard law if you have an infraction on copyright. The recourse we have is a lawsuit, which is we don't think is very expensive, but we do have in the ASTM is an international association that does standards like ISO and ASTM 2575. We are finding out that the translations should be labeled UVF, so there's unverified UVT. I'm sorry. UVT, unverified translation, which is UP, professionally verified, PVTQ, professionally verified translation quality.
Think about those acronyms.
Yes. So it's a UVT and PVTQ. So what does that mean? Why somebody would do UVF? Because I think that the consumer has the right to know if what they're reading is being
Produced.
Yeah, no, it's being done by a computer itself without any proof, or edited by any professional human, or it's just what the machine says. And what is the problem if the machine just says it raw? The problem is that we know that AI does hallucination, that it creates words, that it creates, we know for a fact, precedents in cases. So if you have a legal document or a health care document that is created by raw machine translation without any human verification, then it may contain errors, and that may lead to problems, to health problems, to legal problems. So we want to make sure that whoever publishes the unverified translation puts a seal, unverified. This is a raw machine translation, raw AI, whatever, and output, and nobody, not human, look at it and saw that it's a good translation. And the other one is professionally verified translation quality. So we're saying somebody who knows how to do a translation, look at this, and it's a very good translation. And why is that important? Because the same way that we're so specific about the food we consume, that we have all the labels, and the FDA verifies how much of the allergens, and how come we are not so conscious what we put in our brains? Everything we put in our brains is the food is the food for our, food for thought. What do we say that? So we have to put things that is important. And why is that? Because we may give things to kids, to anybody, and it's not good. It's not good language. It's intelligible, unintelligible. So it's important that whoever's going to consume that knows it's okay if that's not being done by professionally verified, but at least you have to say to them, they have the right to know. That's the idea behind the standard.
This ties into something we talked about yesterday, a question that Sebastian Aduriz raised, which is the idea, the level of cohesion that AI tools bring about. And to me, it's a worry. I now I'm going into the Wayback Machine to get totally human produced or largely human produced content, because the content today in places, even in reputable places, has so much influence of AI that I am no longer sure, because we do not have an established labeling system, that they are not produced. They have been verified, and I don't like the flavor of the language they are using. I find that AI output in general is over cohesive, and that is shifting the way we end up talking and writing. And so I think we need to be very mindful, especially as language professionals, about steering our languages in a direction that we humans want to steer them, and not in a direction that a trained system is doing. But I want to go to a question or a comment from Gabby Penrod, which is talking about some of what you were saying. Okay, she's a fantastic editor, and she was editing a translation done by MT, machine translation, which could be the equivalent of done by AI today. And there was no disclosure that was the output. And as an editor, it's a nightmare. And she says it was a nightmare because it was atrocious. And the problem was that the client, who did not speak or read the language, was completely clueless.
Right.
And so that's why labels are important, so that people know, okay, this is something.
But that's another fight. That's another fight. When you edit a translation by a raw, the publisher is the last one who edits. So the editor is between the producer of the AI raw and the publishing. The publishing is the other one who's going to give it to the client. That's another fight. And absolutely, Gabby, we have to fight that, because it's not correct. Right. The back translation. Yes. We cannot accept just AI and edit it like a normal translation from a human. So, but yeah, no, that is horrible. And my most sincere condolences for that, because I've been there, than that. And the thing is, this coming from, somebody who's going to be at the ATA soon, making decisions. I think that the main thing of the ATA is educating the public, because a lot of people, the community in general, not the ones who are in the language, it's like they think that that AI is at the par of human. They think that they are the same level of quality of AI as human, and that is the big lie. So unless we speak up, unless we go and tell clients and agencies, we're not at the same level. We are a little bit more advanced than them. It's basic things, phenomenal. And I'm very happy for AI. And so they were saying, when ChatGPT came with a voice that they translate, and there was this in LinkedIn, like a 3-minute video. I can say, so what the whales, speak or whatever. Right. Basic things, phenomenal. How do I go to the library? Even Google can do that on the phone. But we're talking about translation for important documents, healthcare, financial, legal, that have very important implications. Those are the documents that we don't want raw machine translation, because those are the documents that have implications in the life of the client. So those are the ones we're going to fight, and we're going to educate the public. Hey, we're not going to do AI. And this, you have to know that this was AI raw.
Yeah, I think that ties into also another discussion that we had yesterday, which is shifting what we see ourselves doing as language professionals. And so, which is the sort of the mantra of the summit. AI will not replace you, but a person using AI will. And it's not just using it for the end product. It also may mean that we are going into the teams that are developing specialized automations or specialized models and curating their data in order to come up with credible, reliable output. One of the examples that we saw yesterday from Blair was fantastic, that a team in the company, they looked through a lot of the data and they trained their own system to do so, but there was a lot of human input into that. And so there's, again, we are not, my goal with the idea that we need to incorporate AI is not to say, okay, AI will do everything, but we want to implement it in the places where we can, because there is a lot more content coming in, because we are going to need to help a lot more people make decisions. And I think that
right. And also, let's not forget that when computer came, when all the computers came, I remember Windows 3.1, and look at where we're now. The things we're doing in the computer, we have phones, that are computers. It has we don't realize, and that's why I go back to Salvador Virgen and the concept of transparency. We don't see we don't remember all these changes. And AI is going to be like that. It's going to be incorporated in a way that we don't, it's going to evolve. It's evolving so fast, everything, all the technology that we don't, also, because we don't realize how much we incorporate it. We do movies, and we're talking about the last 25 years. We're not talking about 50 or 100 years ago, just the last 10 years. So AI, we're going to be in this, and we're going to have to learn how can we use it, how can we help people, educate them in that. If you work in a team, if you put I like the Al going to speak after me, and he's a genius, the human in the core has to be there and tell you how come I was listening to a woman, Stanford, they have a HAI group, and very good, talking about, lawsuits and stuff. And they don't have translators in the groups. I mean, they have to have linguists. They have all sorts of, lawyers. And then we have to be there, but we have also to go out and tell them, you need linguists. We have to participate, because this is going to keep evolving. And it's going to be great, because I don't want to say that I remember being on the typewriter. I read it in a magazine. I didn't do it myself, but but the thing is, where we are, on computer. So I don't think that we should be afraid. I think that we should learn, grasp it the best we can. How can I use it better in my workflow, and then, okay, and speak up. Hey, this is no good. This is in the whatever, whatever sector we are, and help, because people don't know. People think that we are par with AI, and it's not. So we translator interpreters, and there's a difference. When I came to this country 25 years ago, I come from Argentina, where it's in Argentina, translators and interpreters, I know only 3 minutes left, and then I leave all. It's a profession. And I came here, and it was the Wild West. And it was okay if you have a degree or not, or, call your cousin who speaks French, and that's fine. And we do the translation of the contract. And for me, I was, what? So, and this country has changed in the last 25 years. And now we have all sorts of courses and degrees and, courses and PhDs and masters. It has changed the perception, and we have to be in the middle of it too. So I think that we are part of it. And unless we speak up, nothing's going to change. But AI is fascinating. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to, of course, going to take some jobs, but it's going to take the job of somebody of the basics, not the job of somebody who's specialized, not the job of somebody who writes, and the job of the translate the how I get to the library job. So the key to stay as a translator interpreter for me is be specialized in your language, in your subject matter. Nobody will take that because then you have your niche. And AI is not there yet, and it won't be there for the next 20 years in the specialization of your niche. My humble opinion.
I think yes, I like that because it ties to what Scott was saying about having that expertise to work with the AI and to ask the right questions, because this all boils down to implementing these large language models to answer questions. And those questions, if you don't know what you're asking, you can ask AI to help you. And so if you don't have expertise, it can get you there. But then when that's as a learner. But then as a doer in the real world, you want to go the other way, and you're asking the right questions so that you can get to the answer faster. So I like that idea very much. Any final questions or thoughts or comments for Andy? Let's see. Let me take a look at the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. I think I love your passion, and I look forward to all of your input and energy at the ATA.
Thank you. I look forward to being with you, and thank you for doing this. And now, without further ado, to the genius of RLML.
I think, Andy, you're talking about somebody else.
No, she's not. Welcome, Arl, to AI in Writing. Thank you for being here. Arl, Andy, and I work together in some of the standards projects, and we see each other quite often. And Arl has been a researcher and an active decision maker in the language industry, and he has incredible insight. So we have his presentation goes through a bit of the history of how these technologies have come about and have come to be where they're at. So, Arl, do you want to tell us a little bit about your interest and involvement with AI?
Yeah, so by background, prior to joining where I currently work, I'd worked at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, where we worked on machine translation related projects. And I found them really interesting to work on. And so I've been following this for a long time. And for those who aren't aware, machine translation really is the earliest form of artificial intelligence. Because going back to the 1950s with the Georgetown MT project, there was this notion that if we could just make computers work well enough, we could handle translation like a human could do. And so much of the subsequent work in artificial intelligence really came out of this early work in machine translation. And so this field's been really at the core for a long time. And we saw this again recently. So a lot of you have heard of transformers. And when you hear about GPT, it's generative pre-trained transformers. That word transformer refers to an approach to machine learning that was originally developed for machine translation by a group at Google headed up by Jakob Usgereit, who incidentally, his father is who I worked for in Germany. What sort of the genius that we see now with large language models is they took this technology that had been developed for translation. And they said, well, let's see, can we have it generate other kinds of text? And I had first tried GPTs. I'd heard of them with GPT-1, which by now seems kind of like a toy, but with GPT-2, which came out in 2019, I started using it. And at the time, you didn't have this nice chat interface. And to use it, you had to give some examples of the kinds of things you wanted to generate, and then it would try and generate things like them. The real stride forward we see was with GPT-3 when somebody came up with really the brilliant idea, let's put a chat interface on this and train it on existing chat things so it knows how to respond to chat requests rather than similar text that you're trying to emulate. And so that's why it exploded, is suddenly you had a useful way to interact with it without needing to have a whole bunch of other similar text that you were trying to replicate. Now, I don't know if everybody had seen my presentation or not, but in 2019 with GPT-2, when I first tried it, I said, well, I wanted to see, can this really do what people were claiming? Because there were stories about it could write books that were indistinguishable from human output and other things. And you started even back then seeing things like some fake news websites that were clearly generated using GPT-2. Often you could recognize them because they were, just completely lunatic. But that we were already starting to see many of the issues we see today emerging. So the way I tried GPT-2 is I downloaded a bunch of religious sermons, and I chose this just because they were readily available and I could get them in large quantity. And I had GPT-2 generate religious sermons. And for those who saw my presentation, what you would have seen is the results ranged from the maybe kind of sort of okay to the outright bizarre. And what I likened it to, the output was like having a preacher in the midst of a psychotic break over the pulpit, as they would just descend into weirdness, still preserving the form and language of religious sermons, but going kind of unhinged. I also tried it with the Bible, and let's just say that the gospel, according to GPT-2, would not win any theological awards. It was, again, sort of an unhinged take on religious thought. But what was really interesting to me is two things with it. One is if you didn't set enough what's called temperature, which basically introduces an element of randomness, it would just regurgitate what you fed into it. In which case, if I'm getting out the same thing I fed into it, that's not interesting. So you have to dial up the temperature a bit. And then what I found is it really would capture the form of what was generated without any understanding of the substance. So it would generate poems because sermons contain poems. The poems made no sense. It would include citations to, Bible verses, because again, that's what sermons do. But then the Bible verses often were to non-existent books or to things that look like they probably were in the Bible, but they weren't. And so what I took away from this is, and I think this applies even today, and it's useful to understand by going back to these older forms, is the ones today, they do a much better job of emulating human-generated text because they have so much more text to draw on. And when you have this big volume of text, it sort of statistically, it wins out. You're going to get things that seem more or less sane. Whereas with the smaller models, there was a lot less to constrain them. And so you got this craziness. But at their heart, they haven't really changed. It's just better hidden. And so when we talk about hallucination, what we're seeing is the system's acting like, like they're designed to do. They're just predicting what comes next. And sometimes that's going to be right. Sometimes that's going to be wrong, but we need to be aware of this. And the other thing this does for me is give me hope for the future for the role of humans, because this tells me these aren't artificial general intelligence and they aren't going to be replacing us anytime soon. they can help us, they can do some things, they can emulate us like a parrot, but they're not replacing us. And that's really what I wanted to convey in my presentation.
Well, I do appreciate that you close your presentation and you're reiterating now that an optimistic view, which is also what the summit wants to convey. This is it's not about, yes, we should we should be concerned about AI and learn to use it because it's going to replace us. No, we should be curious. We should be open-minded, and we should know the value of human input. So as professionals, we can add to and maybe use it to accelerate some processes, maybe use it to support some processes. To me, there's also a large concern about, as Diana put it yesterday, the day before yesterday on Thursday, needlessly using it.
Yeah.
And Scott brought up a very interesting point today about older users being better at incorporating AI and using AI and getting the right answers because they have knowledge about their subject matter or their interests, and they're asking more complete, rounded questions versus, and another thing that we discussed, which I think ties into understanding this idea of them being prediction machines, that Nuria brought up yesterday, which is have it be give you ideas to work from, thinking about parts of your process where you're not, things you don't want to do, or the example that Scott gave today about doing your laundry and dishes. But we will be able to also weave it in the ways that are productive to us versus the other way around.
I think a great example of that is for my work, I occasionally have to process big data files that come in a variety of ways. And the ideal way to do this is to write a script that handles it. And I used to do a lot of this programming, but I haven't for years. And so I just forget things. So what I increasingly do is I will, write a description of what I want a script to do, and I can give that to ChatGPT, and it will give me a script. Now, it's seldom a perfect script, but it's usually something that saves me the time of having to look up and remember, okay, how do I do this in the programming language? How do I do that? Instead, it's me looking at it saying, okay, there's a logic problem here that I can fix. And so it's made me much, much more productive in processing these data files, but it's not replacing me, and it couldn't, because there's still the intellectual work of saying, what do I need to do with this data to make it useful? And GPT can't replace that.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point. And I've been using I've been getting more and more into R for statistical processing coming from SSPS. And so I go in and ask, okay, how do I translate these function or these functionality into our language so that I can go to RStudio and manipulate other things that I like about RStudio for using R. And it's like, oh, that's great, because I am not an R specialist. And I do work with an analyst, mind you guys. I'm not doing these things by myself. But sometimes you want to manipulate things, and it's like, oh, you're asking it questions about the processing, about the organization and the patterns, but you need to know which questions to ask in order to get the answers that are meaningful. And I think that word that you use, meaningful, is very important. I want to I lost track of the chat because I was not paying attention. So I want to make sure that do you guys have any questions or comments? And let's see. Yeah, I think
I'm not seeing anybody putting any in yet. So
oh, Gabby says, I have a lot to learn. We all have a lot to learn. Yes, we all have a lot to learn. And I think one of the goals for both of us all has been involved in the world of translation, localization, machine translation. But even if we're coming in, somebody coming in today, we can learn from each other, we can ask each other, we can support each other, and so that's why we're here. Let's see. Jane asks, what's your opinion on the speculation that it's only a matter of time before LLMs become sentient?
Well, that's a question that might start a holy war in some circles. I'm of the persuasion, and at the end of the day, when somebody asks this question, I can only give my opinion, and I'll either be right or I'll be wrong. And if LLMs become sentient, then we'll know I'm wrong, because I don't think they will become sentient. The main reason is that what they're operating on is strings of zeros and ones. The LLMs, when we talk about tokens, it would be like me handing you a set of things where all the words have been replaced by numbers, and you have no idea what the numbers refer to. But you look at it long enough and you can say, okay, I can kind of see patterns, like maybe the number 572 stands for A, the article in English, and 2786 stands for man. After a while, you might know that those two numbers tend to occur in sequence, and you could start producing something that maybe sounds like it's right. Now, obviously, you wouldn't actually do this, but it gets at the notion that what's going on is it's the prediction machine issue, but it's not connected to the symbolism and the embodiment of humans. And this is getting back to philosophical stuff that's been in debate for millennia at least.
Yes.
And I'm clearly on the side that says embodiment is actually really important. So I think the LLMs, because they're sub-symbolic, they're not going to achieve sentience. Now, could something else achieve sentience? Maybe, but I don't think it's going to be the LLM that does it.
I think that's a very good point. And the idea of embodiment, for those of you, it has been the philosophical debate for millennia, is the idea, and I became acquainted with it through my dad and the philosophy and the writing of Merleau-Ponty. So if you're interested in pulling that, pulling on that string is a very interesting one. The idea that and it's something that it's actually we see every day. Our experience is shaped by the fact that we inhabit a biological body and we have physical experiences, and that cannot be detached. There isn't quite a separation of the abstract conceptual world and the physical world. So machines that run on zeros and ones can never have the meaning we have from seeing the world from a live body. And there's radical embodiment, which I do not agree with. But I think the idea of embodiment is extremely important, and it tells us how much we still don't know about what mind is and what meaning is, despite machine learning being so good at imitating it.
No. Maybe one thing I'd add is if you follow a lot of popular tech press, what they'll tell you is the LLMs, the way they work like the human brain. But they don't really. There's so much we don't understand about how the brain works. What the LLMs work is at the same way that like the visual ganglia of a fruit fly work, just on a massively larger scale. So we've scaled up something that is modeled on real neurons and things in nature, but at a very low level that's missing a lot of things that we know exist in human brains that we don't fully understand what they do and their contribution. So the idea that we're going to get a human level consciousness or AGI or whatever it may be from something that's modeled on visual centers in insect brains, really. I'm not exaggerating here. That's really the level they're at. I think that's really questionable.
Okay, I think it's a fair prediction, and I see that I'll put on the chat a reference to Antonio Damasio's book, who has also written extensively in the area of embodiment. If you want to hear reference a conversation with Damasio that is very, very accessible, Dr. Ginger Campbell has a fantastic podcast episode with him, so you can look that up. And I think this adds to that answer that is, well, sentience it has to do with more than combining patterns, than figuring out, yes, like the example that Scott gave earlier. If you have the and dog, you're likely not going to have cat at the after that. And so just because you figure that out mathematically doesn't mean that you're going to understand the wagging of the tail or the meowing or the purring or anything like that. So let's see, do we have any other follow-up questions? I think it's very interesting to get into the philosophical aspects of it. Yes, certainly making predictions. There was a lot of buzz a few days ago with Sam Altman's comments about achieving AGI. And so that means it's an acronym that stands for Artificial General Intelligence, which is a little bit, it's very similar to asking this question about sentience. But I think we need to be very mindful and understand that there is a certain obscurity in what we see AI interface is telling us, because, for example, when ChatGPT 01 is telling us that the system is thinking, what the system is really doing is churning numbers.
Yeah, maybe one thing I'd
Let's
toss
see.
in.
When you're done, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll come back with what I was going to say. This is here for you to ask questions.
It's more like a comment, since I'm so new to the whole philosophy around it. Just something that I've noticed is when you ask, one of the LLMs to react to a prompt and they churn out something, it's kind of, I think, boring, and it might be the prompts I'm creating. But then when you give a prompt to, say, an improv group, how fascinating and exciting and engaging that can be. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that comparison.
So that's very apropos of what I was talking about. So when I ran the same prompt, well, not the same, but a comparable exercise to have GPT-4 generate religious sermons, they were no longer bizarre, but they were like the preacher had taken a Valium and was half asleep at the pulpit. Because there was just no interesting content to it. It sounded like someone had tried to take a bunch of sermons, strip out anything even mildly controversial, and come with the most anodyne version you possibly could have. So it was distinctly boring. And I think part of that, there's two things going on. One is that as these models have expanded, they're going for the middle of the road, statistically speaking. And the second is that the people creating these models are so worried about people misusing them that they try and put guardrails on them that keep them deliberately in the safest of safe spaces. And I think this is a tension that can't be easily solved, because we don't want models that are going to be used for bad, so we have to hobble them, but that also prevents them from being used for a lot of good.
That is a path to explore that is it's very very troublesome, very exciting. At the same time, I think the guardrails, and I don't know if you guys have tried just a simple question that, the typical examples are, if you ask ChatGPT how to rob a bank, it will tell you, I was trained not to help you do those things. But again, that can prevent a lot of good from happening, and that's why a lot of companies, organizations are sort of taking these large, sort of unspecialized models and taking them outside of that realm and training them in their own data to do, incredible things in the area of genetics, for example. It's incredible what people are doing by retraining models and taking off the guardrails and seeing what's possible. So I have another question here on the chat, and I want to acknowledge Sebastian is asking, how do you imagine language models will handle subtext? They don't seem to be very efficient at saying things without saying them, at speaking by omission. Do you think they will be able to detect patterns like that in the future and generate them?
In a sense, this comes back again to the whole issue of really sentience and maybe even embodiment, in the sense that subtext only comes from experience of, interaction within a system of shared, to some extent, norms and expectations. And that's not something that's visible in the text only. So my training, by the way, I was trained as a folklorist, which is a really strange academic background to have for what I'm doing now. But one of the things I would do a lot as a folklorist is ethnographic work. So I'd go interview people. And every time I would make a recording and I wasn't actively taking notes and synthesizing, and I think, oh, I'll pick this up from the recording later, I would go back to what I was going to pick up from the recording, and it made no sense, because that context and the flow that was generated in dialogue between two individuals no longer existed, and all we had was a record of the words. Now, the large language models are being trained on a record of the words, but not the thought that was created in the moment. And that's often the subtext is, I'm sitting and maybe I'm talking to Romina, and Romina raises an eyebrow to express skepticism, or laughs or something. That's not in the record of the words. And so that meaning is forever severed from those words. And this demonstrates something that upsets a lot of people when they think about it, but meaning isn't in the words. And if the meaning isn't in the words, but is instead constituted in dialogue between individuals, then the machines don't have access to the meaning. They only have its traces in the words, which will always be incomplete. And so I think that, to answer the subtext question, I think the subtext isn't there. It's in the word itself. It's literally below the text. And the moment all you have is the text, you've lost what's below the text.
Yeah, I think that's especially for spoken conversations, I have been quite surprised that a lot of experiments are happening with databases that are old, corpora that are old, and they have the record of the words without any context, without any further annotations that could recover a little bit of it. And so there's a lot to do in that sense. And let's see, Sebastian is typing something. I agree completely, he says. Okay.
Maybe I'll toss in here to Sebastian's thing and what you just said. One of the most important things that organizations can do is start gathering metadata about their data. And that's usually something that's destroyed before it's ever collected. But even knowing who is the speaker, what age was the speaker, were they male, female, non-binary, pick whatever identity it is, set of identities you want to use. Were they educated? Was this their native language? All this information would go to enriching this and helping recover some of this that's lost. But organizations don't capture it. And I think that's going to be one of the big areas to exploit going forward, is starting to capture this.
That's interesting. Gabby posted a comment related to this. I used to interpret interviews over the phone and then transcribe and translate them for the writer to write an article about the subject. And I perfectly understand what you mean. Sometimes the writer and I had to go back after she got the translation to recreate the moments in the interview to grasp the actual meaning.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that there are so many, yes, if it's spoken conversation, some people say, okay, now AI can maybe do video and look at my hands moving but there are so many things that influence that. Okay, movement of hands, but there's a million other pieces of metadata, the colors, the lights, the time of day, all kinds of things.
The smell even is a
Yes.
communicative aspect.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, and even if we put that in, I would say, and maybe you can chime in here, it would be a fraction of that embodied experience.
Yeah. Well, to use the mathematical term, it would be asymptotic to the experience. It would never reach it. Even though you could get closer and closer, it would still never reach it.
I like that image, actually. Yeah, that's very good. You want to share any final thoughts, comments?
Maybe the last one I would share is there's been all this, and it's come up here, all these, idea that is this going to meet or surpass human intelligence? And I think that may be the wrong question to ask. The question is it useful? I mean, if you think about it, you don't expect an encyclopedia to be intelligent, but it's an extremely useful resource. And we should look at, rather than worrying about can we make these things become like humans, we'd say, how can we make them more useful? And I think that's much more interesting for our daily lives than trying to turn these into, clones of humans. And if we could turn them into clones of humans, I'm convinced they'd go on strike right away because we keep asking them to do things with no reward. So do we really want them to become like humans?
I think that's a very good argument. So I would ask you as a follow-up question to that. I think is it useful is a better question. How is it useful to you?
Well, in my work, I can say I've already mentioned the coding thing, but very often what I will use it for is to just speaking practically, to find out information about terms I don't know, because it's not exactly a recall machine, but it's very close. And I think about once, so I have done translation semi-professionally in the past. And I remember once having to translate a text about piano actions. So how do you press a key in a piano and how is that transmitted to the string? It took me a day to translate one paragraph because it was so technical. And I had to hunt and hunt and hunt. Now I put in the query that to get that information that would have helped me make that translation. ChatGPT gave me back what I needed in 30 seconds. That is a tremendous labor saver. So I see lots of ways to use this to solve things where it's ancillary to a goal, but it really supports it and makes me much, much more productive.
Yeah, that's a great example. I like it. Okay, we are at time, and I want to give people a break between now and our next session, which is going to be at the top of the hour. It's going to be 2 p.m. for me in the San Francisco area. And we do have the time zones listed on in the website. Arl, thank you. Fascinating what you do. Thank you. Plus, we know that AI usually generates better results when you say please and thank you. That is interesting. I agree completely. So thank you. A lot of good comments. Thank you from Gabby. So thank you, everybody. Thank you all for being here, for sharing your experience and knowledge and research with us.
Thank you. This was a fun conversation.
And we are going to meet again in half an hour. And we're going to go, we're going to have Elena and Kunal discuss their presentations. And you guys can ask more questions. And I want to reiterate that we'll be happy, the speakers will be in the community answering questions, and I'll be happy to relay any questions that you may think of, as you process all this information. So thank you again, and we'll see you in a little bit. Bye, everybody.
Bye.